Welcome to our review of Inside the Kidney. So in our previous video we did talk about the kidney very briefly, but you need to know a little bit more about it. So first thing we're going to have a look at is the actual structure of the kidney itself. So I've given you a nice diagram on the left hand side there with these key features labelled that you need to know which one's which, just in case you're asked to label that diagram in the exam. So if you remember, the tube that goes from the kidney down to the bladder is the ureter. Coming into the kidney and supplying it with the blood is the renal artery, and leaving the kidney to take the blood away from it, the renal vein. When you see the word renal, it just means to do with the kidney. The kidney then itself is divided up into three parts. We have the capsule, which is the outer membrane which helps keep the kidney shape and protect it from damage. Next bit in is the cortex, which is the outer part of the kidney there. And then you've got the medulla, which is the inner part of the kidney. When we zoom in on what's actually inside those kidneys, then the actual structures that carry out the most important part of our kidney, which is this filtering process, is something called a nephron. Now, inside each of your kidneys, you've got about 1 million nephrons. So you can imagine they're very, very small. The top of the nephron is found within the cortex, and the lower section, including the loop of Henle, is found in the medulla. So now we know the bits of a kidney, we need to actually know what they do in terms of its actual function. So what we see first of all is that blood enters the kidney under high pressure through the renal artery. Now, each branch of the renal artery is going to eventually lead to this little ball of blood vessels called the glomerulus. So it's a knot of capillaries. So you can see at the bottom there, I've given you a close-up of it. So you can see the blood entering on the left-hand side there, and then it forms that little knot of capillaries where the blood's going to pass through before leaving on the right-hand side there. So in order to actually make sure that we get this high blood pressure, then the blood vessels narrow at the exit to the glomerulus. So that means the blood pressure will be increased. When we've got that high blood pressure within the glomerulus, it's actually going to force small molecules like our water and glucose and the urea out of the capillary walls and into the structure called the Bowman's capsule, which is that kind of yellow U-shaped bit you can see in the bottom left. Any large molecules, so things like the actual red blood cells, white blood cells, large proteins, etc., they're too big to fit through the capillary wall, and so they remain within the blood. So this process by which we're pushing some bits out into the Bowman's capsule, but not everything, this is called ultrafiltration. So ultrafiltration happens within the glomerulus. High pressure forces small molecules out through the capillary wall into the Bowman's capsule, and the large molecules remain in the blood. So from the Bowman's capsule, if you look at the diagram in the bottom right, you can see that yellow tube that then continues on down. So that filtrate is going to move through the nephron tubule, and as it does so, all of the glucose is reabsorbed. Now, it's not just glucose that's going to be reabsorbed here. Some of the water and any salts that our body needs are also reabsorbed back into the blood. And that's a process called selective reabsorption. We're only reabsorbing the bits that we actually need in our body. The rest of the filtrate, as you can see, just carries on through, passes through the loop of Henle, which is that big long drop down, and then into the collecting ducts on the left hand side there. This is where any extra salt and water is reabsorbed as and when our body needs them. Anything left over within that collecting duct, that is the waste solution, and that's going to travel down through the ureter to the bladder, where excretion will then occur at a convenient time, we hope. Hopefully at the end of this video you can now identify the structures that are present within the kidney and describe the function of the different regions of a nephron.